And 3, 2, 1, go.
Hello. Welcome to Kernels of Truth, brought to you by Progress, Kentucky. This week, we are excited to bring you a recap of Fancy Farm with a cringe-worthy national news moment that it generated. We have a very important interview on the campaign corner with Courtney Rhoades Mullins, the Black Lung organizer with the Appalachian Citizens Law Clinic, to discuss a newly proposed federal regulation on silica dust and whether it does enough to actually protect minors. Then we are really looking forward to talking Kentucky politics with Dr. Brian Clardy, Associate History Professor at Murray State and Chair of the Kentucky Humanities Council. Then we're going to close out with a heartfelt invitation to join us in just a week and a few days at our election campaign kickoff meeting, as we have that as our weekly call to action. So really important event. We'd love to have you join us. If you are remotely close to the bluegrass or want to make a trip out of it, come on, hang out with us, talk about our plans to turn our Commonwealth purple. So we know, folks, our state is deeply red. We have this GOP supermajority that is committed to moving us backwards on LGBTQ plus rights, on women's healthcare access, eroding the sanctity of our voting process through gerrymandering and weakening the ability of unions to collectively organize for better working conditions and better pay. And if you're tired of that, if you want something better, if you want a Commonwealth that works for all of us, please join Progress Kentucky, support our campaign to turn our Commonwealth purple. You can make a donation at our Secure Act Blue website. It's there. It's secure. Any amount is awesome. We are planning our election campaign launch to push back against the hateful liar, Dan Cameron. We need resources to print flyers, to pay for text platforms, to promote our efforts on social media and digital ads. So please make a generous contribution today to help our efforts. So let's now check in with our co-host, or maybe co-hosts, depending on how long this segment goes. So we're going to check in and hear who you are, where you are, and what does your protest sign say today? You there on the internet watching the show. We mean you as well. I want to read what your sign says. What are you protesting today? Or maybe it's a positive affirmation. Maybe it's more of a positive, more like a rally and less like a protest. Either way is cool. What would your sign say today? So I'm Aaron. I'm coming to you from Childsburg, which is it's not an incorporated city. It's just a subdivision in Lexington, very close to the growth boundary. I'm very close to some horse farms, which is pretty nice, but means there's a lot of traffic to get into Lexington. Just so you know. What my sign says today, who wants to be friends with a rock that gives workers black lung? That's my question. All right, Nate Orshan, are you there?
I am here, and I do not want to be friends with a rock that gives anybody black lung, especially minors who work their asses off all their lives for not a lot of money and, yes, a lot of grief. This is Nate Orshan coming live and direct from Kids in My Home here in South Frankfort, just a stone's throw away from the Capitol. And I guess tying in with a story we'll get into a little bit later, my sign would say something like, Fancy Farm, every August you greet us, and politicians mislead us.
Oh, that's awesome. I love a little internal rhyme in my protest sign. That is an absolute truism.
Do you see what he did there?
All right. So, and just in the nick of time, our third co-host Kimberly Cecil Jones seems to be joining us. Kimberly, are you there? What's your protest sign say?
My protest sign says today that it is on, it is on, it is on.
Fantastic. Should I ask you about what the it is in this situation, or will it become
Yes, because
later?
people need to understand how elated Black people are all over this country. And I've been talking to some Black folks right here in Jefferson County and a few across the state. So some things happened over the weekend that really gave us a feeling of strength.
You are talking about the Montgomery Brawl.
I know it's not about Kentucky, but it is about Kentucky. That's how monumental it is.
All right. I did see some of the videos, and I'm here for it. I didn't ever, haven't seen a chair put to such use outside of a WWE match for sure. I think the Black Aquaman jokes were fantastic. I think, the whole thing was just an eye-opening experience of like, hey man, look at these cracker racist rednecks. What are they even thinking they're going to get away with? And
I
they didn't
just
get
wanted
away with
to
anything.
I just wanted to talk just for a few moments about what those jokes meant and what they mean to the Black community, because a lot of people don't understand why were they calling him Black Aquaman. That's because it's a trope on Black folks that we really don't know how to swim, even though I was on the diving team in high school. The way he did his hat, the port worker did his hat. So, those were just some of the things that I wanted to talk about and how elated Black Americans are right now.
Well,
we never have these things happen for us. Like, we never have these things happen for us.
I get it.
Yeah, it's a big story. It's got a lot of public eyes on it. And I think we discussed it for a second, which I think is about appropriate. So I don't know. I am definitely looking to. I always want to hear your thoughts on the news of the day. I think we should talk about some Kentucky political stories, though, in our News of the Week segment. I'm a fan of the Kentucky political news stories. So we're going to get into that segment. We've got a couple kind of important stories to cover, one of which is, of course, Fancy Farm, because it was the Kentucky political news story of the week for sure. And Nate's going to cover it for us right here, right now. Nate, take it away.
Me. Fancy Farm, Fancy Farm. Every August you greet us. Sweaty arms, ears are harmed, and politicians mislead us. Well, mostly politicians on the extremist right wing of the political spectrum, also known these days as the Republican Party of Kentucky. Yes. The 143rd annual St. Jerome's Church Fancy Farm Picnic was held last Saturday, and it included the now famous tradition of having Kentucky elected political leaders and candidates for statewide office give speeches, complete with attempts at roast-worthy jokes at the expense of political opponents. And a lot of screaming. So who spoke? Well, pretty much every candidate for every statewide election coming up this November, including, for starters, Democratic candidate for treasurer Michael Bowman and the other guy. Democratic candidate for agriculture Sierra Enlow and the other guy. Democratic candidate for Secretary of State Buddy Wheatley and the other guy who's the current incumbent. And you can tell I don't want to give the Republican candidates too much oxygen. Well, with a little exception. Most important, Governor Andy Beshear and his Republican opponent, current Attorney General Daniel Cameron. About the two gubernatorial candidates' separate speeches, Herald Leader op-ed writer Linda Blackford had the following to say, quote, Cameron went after Beshear along the usual lines of transgender indoctrination, liberal ideologies, jobs, shutting schools and churches during COVID, Joe Biden, Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. We've heard it all before. Neither he nor anyone else mentioned Trump, who had endorsed Cameron a year ago, because apparently 3 indictments is one too many even for the GOP. She goes on to talk about Governor Beshear. He mentioned the Breonna Taylor grand jury before trying to take the high road with talk of economic development, job numbers, and Kentuckians who take care of each other. Beshear said, quote, "This race is the difference between vision and division. They're trying to pit everyone against each other. I'm ready to prove that's a losing strategy in the Commonwealth." As Blackford added, "What Fancy Farm gives us is a preview of the campaigns that will unfold." Yes, but then there are some of the current office holders who don't have an election this year, but they've showed up for whatever egocentric reasons of their own. Congressman Jamie Comer showed up, and according to Blackford, he just bombed. Quote, "Instead of bragging on the Republican slate as he was supposed to, he went on a long, rambling speech about his investigation of Hunter Biden. It was so long and confusing that people didn't even bother to shout much." But you know who people did bother to shout much at? I can talk, I swear. That's right, the one, the only, the guy putting the senior citizen in senior senator, Mitch McConnell. What did he say? Who knows? Because apparently it was nonstop screaming against him the whole time. Which brings me to a sidebar observation. Following McConnell's speech, which, let's face it, was a little brave given all the weird public incidents he's had lately, like blanking out during a speech a little while back and leaving the podium for a short while, or apparently falling off an airport bench. All these news outlets came out with headlines like, quote, "Mitch McConnell, 81, is humiliated as he is drowned out by chants of 'retire' and mercilessly booed for 5 minutes straight during speech to his own constituents in Kentucky," from the Daily Mail. And by the way, leave it to a British newspaper to have like the world's longest headline. Or this one, "Mitch McConnell ruthlessly drowned out with chants of 'retire' in the New Republic." Well, folks, I hope you already ate, because these news outlets are feeding you a big fat nothing burger. The point of Fancy Farm, here's the bottom line, is you show up to boo. I should know, because I actually went fairly recently, back in August of 2019, the pre-pandemic years. And my siblings, my dear, dear siblings, let me tell you, we Democrats screamed nonstop throughout Mitch's entire speech. All you could hear was, "Moscow Mitch, Moscow Mitch," so on and so forth. So, is all this heckling a sign of brand new, stronger opposition to Senator McConnell? Heckling? No. Everybody knows that A, he's been extremely unpopular in the Commonwealth for ages, and B, you go to Fancy Farm to boo. So on that count, this year's picnic and cacophonous circus was a rousing and very, very dubious success. Back to you, Aaron.
Right. So I did think that was like the most utterly just horrible take, right? Is that like Mitch was booed? Do you believe it? Even in this rural Kentucky community, they voted for him.
I'm shocked to find there's gambling in this place.
Yeah, it's like, come on, national media, just take a second, click through and watch a video and get a sense of the thing, right? But yeah, so that was interesting. I had, I don't know, Kimberly, if you have thoughts about what your favorite quips were or your favorite lines. I personally was pretty impressed with our lieutenant governor. I thought she did a great job. So, one that she slid a little under the radar was a Bevin divorce joke, saying that Cameron is trying to distance himself from the former governor, and he's not the only one. And not that we should make fun of anyone's divorce. It's a very painful time, I'm sure. And then also one of the best lines, I'd rather be Steve Beshear's son than Mitch McConnell's puppet. Good burn on that one for sure. Kimberly, I don't know, what'd you think of it?
I'm here for the hecklers. I'm here for the embarrassment. I personally am here for all of it because they deserve all of it. And as far as Daniel Cameron is concerned, honestly, he is like a waste of time. I'm telling you guys, in this particular state, he's not going to win. He's not going to win. And I've heard a lot of people in this particular county, the largest county, Jefferson County, that Daniel Cameron, he's toast, man. He is toast.
from your ears, from your lips to the electric ears, for sure. I'm here for
But
that.
but one other thing I like to bring up is that I noticed that his wife was there with him and his mother. And I would be remiss to not point out how you didn't see any black folks or anything on the Republican side. And I also noticed that on the Democratic side, it wasn't as many of us from prior years. And I kind of think that happened over the pandemic, that a lot of Democrats are not really feeding or wasting time, they feel. I'm not going to think it's a waste of time to go into Fancy Farm.
Well, it's from the liberal enclaves, which, obviously there are Democratic voters throughout the state. We're outnumbered in rural counties, and we outnumber Democratic or Republican voters in more urban areas. But if you're looking to how far away is Fancy Farm, from one of those liberal enclaves, like, good God, it's a haul. That is a long way to go. So I don't know, to be really high.
There used to be a lot of the different organizations, especially, our executive committee, a lot of churches, a lot of people would carpool, and then they would have buses, that would go there to Fancy Farm. It was like a big deal. But this year, didn't hear too much about it. There wasn't much buzz about it.
Yeah. Well, it seemed like every Democratic candidate showed up, which is great for sure, because I think, that's important, just to make sure that it's balanced in terms of time at the mic. And, KET live streamed it so people could see it. I know some folks did a watch party here in Lexington. But yeah, it's just a long way to go. I don't know. Did you have any favorite lines or any favorite speakers, Kimberly?
Well, you know who my favorite speaker is going to be. I can't even believe you asked me that question.
Mitch.
Who do you think my favorite speaker was, Aaron?
Big Mitch fan.
Well, you know what? I'm getting ready to hang up. I'm trying to get. I'm disadvantaged right now and disabled, with my technical difficulties here. And then you're gonna put Mitch McConnell in the mix. You know how I don't like that man. I used to when I was younger. He seemed cool, and he built that Mitch McConnell Center. And I got the opportunity to meet the attorney, the great, legendary, late Johnny Cochran, because of him.
Because of Mitch?
How things change. Yeah, that was Mitch.
That's crazy.
Mitch makes me itch. Don't say it again, Aaron. Don't say it again.
Yeah, obviously, Colonel Pam, I'm sure, was your favorite because, y'all are tight. Also, because she's awesome.
She's always my favorite. Always
phenomenal.
She was my number 2.
Oh my gosh. What? Then I don't even know. I don't know what's going on.
Sacred Blue.
Yeah. But look.
Andy?
All right. Is the man. You hear me? There would be no us if it was not for Andy and the great decisions that he has made for our state. All of us could have been dead right now from the pandemic. But he put on his big boy pants and
Where did this pandemic thing come from? Because it makes it sound a little more fun than it really was. I gotta be honest.
I don't want to say the real word. When you put it on YouTube, they censor you so much. But Nicki Minaj, okay, if you must know, Nicki Minaj calls it the pandemic. So people have been picking that up.
Yeah, I hear you. Okay. And Annabelle Nagel's favorite was, of course, her former boss, Sierra Enloe. I actually didn't even watch Sierra. I'm sorry. I was not in state. I was watching on KET, and I was also juggling some family responsibilities. So I will go back and look up Sierra's.
Man, right. I'm gonna tell Andy that Annabelle that she put that. I'm gonna tell him.
You gonna tell who, Andy?
Yeah, I'm gonna tell him.
Why would you rat her out like? I mean, Andy watches. Obviously, Andy watches every week. Oh, yeah. He knows.
anytime you see me commenting, it's actually him. I gave him my login.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just telling you,
Makes sense.
he's got people everywhere, and I'm one of his people. Okay, let's just get that straight right now.
Can we not?
Mhm.
It's 6, by the way. Thank you, Annabelle Nagel. All right, so let's go to our next story because we have lots of other important content we got to cover. So this is, I think it ties in to our campaign corner story. So this is a really fantastic article from Louisville Public Media written by Ryan Van Veltzer, and it's all about how coal communities have an opportunity right now, thanks to, I'm just going to say it, Joe Biden, to do well and to help transition, right? So energy communities across the U.S. have been on the losing end of a decades-long transition away from coal, but a historic amount of federal funding is now available to help revitalize these communities. The federal legislation passed during the Biden administration now includes $672 billion to help U.S. energy communities, like many of those in Eastern Kentucky. But it is not necessarily an easy process to tap into those funds. With my kind of paid gig hat, I pay attention to some of these different federal projects and programs, and it's a laborious process to fill out the applications, to write the grants, etc. But thankfully, in May, federal officials held a community forum that was designed to help rural communities find the resources they need to create jobs, to build infrastructure, to support long-term economic prosperity in their region using these available federal funding programs. So local community leaders talked about their successes revitalizing their communities using low-interest loans and grants. Redevelopment agencies pitched their ideas to federal liaisons, and a bipartisan group of state leaders, which actually included Andy Beshear's senior advisor, Rocky Atkins, showed up to show their support. And I love that it was bipartisan, because this is so important for our state. And Adkins said, "I'm here as somebody that was impacted by the downturn of the coal economy. We are not asking for a handout. We are asking for what we've earned and deserved. Eastern Kentucky helped rebuild America. It's America's time to help rebuild Eastern Kentucky," which is 100% right. And I really do hope we see a lot of success from Eastern Kentucky's coal communities in seeking and receiving these grants, tapping into these historic federal investments. $672 billion, which are available. That's a staggering sum, and can really help lift a lot of communities up with some smart investments. So I hope they take advantage of those. It's a great article. It'll be in the run of show and in the comments. So feel free to peruse away. Unfortunately, I don't have the time to do it fully justice, but thank you, Ryan Van Veltzer, for your attention to this really important issue. All right. Any thoughts about that? Is this something folks are paying attention to or have any feedback on?
I mean, I'll just say that I looked up the federal aid by state per capita because I was interested in knowing how much Kentucky actually gets, and this is from a site called Wise Voter. So take it with a grain of salt, I guess. But $7,777, according to this site. Each one of us is sort of represented in federal dollars coming in. The point just being that we get a lot of federal money. It doesn't come to us necessarily directly, but the federal government has a huge role to play, and has been playing it, and needs to keep playing it. But I think also needs to do a good job communicating that as well. So I think to me, that's where it all fits in. It's like, hey, this is what we're doing for you, and don't forget.
Yeah, for sure. Really, really important that they have the kind of navigator role or some resources to help folks get the resources, right? Because it's not intuitive how to take advantage of those federal programs. Kimberly, any thoughts? Nice to see you, by the way.
Yay!
You are mute.
Of course, you're muted.
I don't know why you just don't unmute me, Aaron. You see I'm on there. Hi, everybody. Oh my goodness, it feels so good. Feels so good to be seen. I was stuck on, Louisville public media. I mean, we got it going on here in Jefferson County in Louisville.
Mm-hmm.
I think people are paying attention to that particular subject because it's going to affect all of us as well as, our grandchildren. And it's going to affect our lineage is what I want to say. I'm not a grandmother yet. Wish I was. However, I think there's a lot of steam with this particular report.
Yeah, for sure. Really important story. All right, so now we're going to move on, head into our campaign corner. Very excited to welcome on Courtney Rhoades Mullins because, as we just heard about Eastern Kentucky's coal communities, an additional burden that's on coal communities besides the economic burden when coal moves on is the significant health impacts. We're really glad to have someone to talk a bit about the recent news in Black Lung. Courtney Rhoades Mullins is the Black Lung organizer with the Appalachian Citizens Law Clinic. Courtney, thanks so much for joining the campaign corner.
Hi, yeah, thanks so much for having me. I work every day with folks that have Black lung, so it's always really great to represent Eastern Kentucky and the folks that I get to work with.
Awesome. And tell us a little bit about the Appalachian Citizens Law Clinic. What do you do besides the kind of Black lung work, or what's the organization's mission?
Yeah, so we just celebrated our 20th year last year, which was very exciting. We came out of a group called Apple Red in the early 2000s when we realized that there was a deep need for someone to be doing mine safety and some environmental work around the coal fields, and then also the legacy that's left by coal. And then we do a lot of federal Black lung work. We are a C3, but we also have the ability of doing a lot of policy work because we don't take any type of federal funding. So I work as an organizer in Eastern Kentucky and Southwest Virginia. And then I work with a really great team that does a lot of policy work in the state as well as on the federal side.
Awesome. So tell us, what is like kind of the overall status of Black lung, especially for Kentucky? What kind of a legacy are we talking about here?
Yeah, I think the first thing to really address is that people think of Black lung as this disease that our grandfathers would get. And what we're actually seeing is that it's in people that are, closer to my age than they've ever been before. There's folks that are getting diagnosed in their 30s, their 40s, their 50s, which, let's be very frank, this is a disability. This is a disabling disease that is going to be incredibly hard to live with, and you're never going to have a cure. You're always going to be struggling. And that, to me, is way too young to be getting diagnosed with an occupational disease that will forever change your life. And so, you would think the other thing too is a lot of people, this is a disease that's been around for over 100 years. People think it's gone because, Eastern Kentucky is not talked about all that often. And it's not. It's actually getting worse. We're seeing complicated Black lung rates in ways that we've never seen before in miners that are younger than they've ever been before. And this started happening roughly about 10 to 15 years ago that we started seeing this rise. And a lot of it has to do with the type of mining that's happening and the types of mining and obviously protections and rights for workers. But it's just very scary to think about that, what the numbers that we're seeing and the fact that this isn't an epidemic that doesn't seem to be going away.
Yeah, that's terrifying. It is one of those things you imagine like, oh yeah, your grandfather had it, and then OSHA stepped in and fixed things and didn't let coal companies put workers in harm's way, but apparently that's not the case. So there's now some new federal rules that are being proposed, though. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so as of right now, the way that the rules are written, obviously anything in mining world is controlled by MSHA, whereas everything else occupational is controlled by OSHA. And the way that those standards are set is that folks who are miners, not just coal miners, any type of miner, are exposed to more silica dust than any other occupation in the United States. So they're willingly able to be exposed to 100 micrograms per cubic meter, which is just a lot of talk. But essentially, as we know, it's way too much for what we're seeing in the disease. And I think there's a great correlation between these exposed level of silica, along with the fact that we're cutting into a lot more rock than we've ever cut into before. And then also the fact that we're seeing these great rates of disease and miners are still being able to be exposed to more. So when last month, they brought out a new silica rule that would put it to 50 micrograms per meter, which is per cubic meter, which is a great step in the right move forward. But there's some complications with the rule that we're also not super excited about.
So what should folks do if they want to, any proposed federal regulation? They need to there's a public comment period that's associated with it. People have a chance to weigh in on these types of rules as they're being developed. How would you suggest people weigh in?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously everything's on Federal Registrar, but we actually have our own petition that's set up on one of our websites called blacklungkills.org. If you go to blacklungkills.org/silica, it will allow you the opportunity to read a little bit more about what's going on in this rule, some of the things that we're not a fan of, one being the fact that a lot of the samples would be allowed to be done by coal companies themselves, which we know could have a higher rate of tampering. And then the other thing is that it would allow them to be the ability to use respirators a lot more than we want to see, because we know that respirators are a very easy cop out. We also know that it's very much a technical thing of like, you have to have it exactly perfect. And they're currently being used in the mining world right now, and we're still seeing rates of disease. And so having them be used in cases where engineering controls cannot keep the silica dust low is not going to be effective. It's especially when it's this word temporary, when we know that just means that they're going to continue working for the rest of their lives using respirators and still have a higher chance of getting black lung, rather than actually controlling those rates. But if you want to learn a bit more about it and sign on to that petition, we'd love to have that. I'd also encourage, if you know someone who is working or has previously worked in coal mines and has experience in this, obviously they can contact our office. We'd love to work with them. They can it's aclc.org, and we'd love to work with them on putting together a comment.
Awesome. That sounds fantastic. So yeah, we will put that petition link in our show notes. It's been in the comments here on Facebook and on YouTube, so you can find it there. There's also, if you want like more of a backstory as well, there's a great article from the Kentucky Lantern recently that looked at the rule as well. So good analysis on their part. Talks to a lot of folks like Courtney, who paid really close attention to this regulation and this problem. So thank you so much for joining us. I wish we had more time, but really important information. Thank you for sharing it with our audience.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. All right, so we are going to now move on to our interview. This is I think second time for this guest to join us, Dr. Brian Clardy, who is an associate professor of history at Murray State University. He is also the chair of the Kentucky Humanities Council, which is pretty awesome. And he is, he's a close observer of Kentucky politics. We've always had a really good time chatting with him about Kentucky politics. So Dr. Clardy, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thank you for having me. It's good to see you guys.
Yeah, nice to see you as well. So I'll take the first question, and then I'll just stop talking. I know you paid attention to Fancy Farm. Kind of, what were your takeaways? What did you think about the event, kind of in a historical context, and just in terms of the zingers you heard?
In terms of voter enthusiasm and the crowd size, it was, to me, roughly the same as it had been in previous years, pre-pandemic. Let me correct that, pre-pandemic. It was roughly the same type of enthusiasm, the signs, the booming, the cheering, the food. It was pretty much the same, but there were some notable things that have been brought up in the conversation earlier. Senator McConnell's appearance at Fancy Farm. First, I didn't think he was going to show up. That's for starters. Given what happened in the Senate during that interview that he gave when he froze up, and he had a medical doctor, John Barrasso, Senator Barrasso, standing right next to him, and Barrasso should have called an ambulance immediately. He didn't. McConnell got a chance to regroup and finish the interview. It set off a lot of alarm bells about his health. And so when he showed up on the stage at Fancy Farm, a lot of us were completely shocked at him and his appearance. He did not look well. He did not sound well. It seemed to me that former Secretary Elaine Chao, his spouse, was holding him up at one point. That was kind of shocking to a lot of us. Now, what made the headlines, of course, was the booing and the shouts of retire, and yes, I was one of them. But it was his appearance that people are tending to forget. I don't think the man's going to run in 26. And to me, the conversation should have shifted to, if Senator McConnell doesn't run for re-election, and he probably won't, what Republican would fill that gap? Would it be a Ryan Quarles? Would it be a Jamie Comer? Will it be a Daniel Cameron? I mean, who would fill that void within the Republican Party, and who would the Democrats put up? So Senator McConnell's appearance is one thing. To me, it seemed as though the Republican candidates had no plan. They had no policies. They had no honest critique of the public policies of the Beshear Coleman administration. It seemed that they went directly culture war. They found a new other now to attack, and that would be the transgender community, the so-called woke mob. That seemed to me, from Daniel Cameron's speech, from Jamie Comer's speech especially, and some other down ballot candidates, that's one of the things that they harped on. And so it seems that that's going to be their campaign calling card in the fall. They have no programs, no policies. And as I said to Barry Craig in an interview that hasn't been published yet, Daniel Cameron is an empty suit, as is Robbie Mills, and they proved it.
Excellent. Nate, do you have any questions for Dr. Clardy?
Yeah, well, I mean, you may have heard me ranting about Fancy Farm a little bit earlier, and you're a seasoned practitioner of the fine art of the Fancy Farm jeer. Is there still value to like regular Kentuckians to this kind of annual spectacle?
Absolutely.
You know? Okay.
Politics is the ultimate contact sport. And, you have similar things going on in other places. Back in Iowa, back in the day, you had the Tom Harkin steak fry. You had different other things going on. I remember when I was involved in Tennessee, we had the Beans and Bull Supper, which was very similar to Fancy Farm, although it was indoors. In the fall of 1994, people like meeting their candidates and engaging their candidates and challenging the people with whom they disagree. So I hope that Fancy Farm will continue to be a uniquely Kentucky and uniquely American institution. I think it's fantastic. I almost missed it this year, though. I got to tell you this story.
Yeah.
I was coming back from the funeral of former Tennessee State Senator Roy Herron. I'd known Roy for about 30 some odd years.
Oh, wow.
He died in a skiing accident. Vice President Al Gore was one of the people giving his eulogy and all that. So I'm driving along Kentucky 94, and I heard this pss, 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 and I'm thinking, am I driving past a field of crickets? And it wasn't crickets. I had blown a tire, and I'm on Kentucky 94. Now, you think about that. I'm on Kentucky 94, two-lane highway. Yeah. So I needed to get pulled over somewhere where I would be safe. Okay. So I completely tore up the rim of the driver's side. So changed the tire. I'm riding on a donut. And I take my car to the dealership, and they say, well, we can replace it, but it's going to be $1,000. I'm like, yeah. I said, I don't have $1,000. But they said, you can get a used rim. And so I'm calling all over Western Kentucky to find a reasonably priced used rim that would fit my car. Just found it today, by the way. And so I was riding on a donut. And so I said, well, looks like I'm not going to Fancy Farm. But one of my friends here in town, Faye Dodd, who is active in Democratic politics in the area. Her father is Al Cunningham. She had sent me a text, something about, hey, are you going to Fancy Farm? I said, no, Faye, I'm not going to be able to make it. I'm riding on a donut. And she said, well, I can take you. And I said, well, I'll spot you for gas. And so it was at the very last minute I was able to go to Fancy Farm. But I'm glad I did, because it was exhilarating. I went to the Graves County Democratic Breakfast earlier that morning and met all of the candidates. And we did a caravan. The Beshear campaign posted that caravan on its site not too long ago. I was a part of that caravan of Beshear Coleman supporters and the Democratic ticket riding into Fancy Farm that morning. And that was way cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, so we'll turn to our co-host Kimberly. I think we're having some technical problems, but hopefully she can ask you a question or chat with you a little bit about Fancy Farm.
Hi, Kimberly. How are you?
Hey, Dr. Clardy, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. Can't complain at all. Summertime is over, playtime is over, and I'm ready to get back into the swing of things.
That's right. Did you all know that Dr. Clardy used to be a regular and he was part of the Jones Report?
No
See?
way.
Awesome.
Excuse me.
Yes,
That's all
right.
I
Yeah.
thought I was going to hear from you guys, because we had some things going on, and we weren't able to talk last month. So when am I going to talk to you guys again?
Oh,
Really,
Yeah,
really
no,
cool.
open invite for sure, Dr. Clardy.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Yes.
I'm game. Just let me know when. So
yeah.
For the producer, am I doing number 3?
You can do whatever you want, Kimberly.
I don't want to read the same one that Nate read, you know.
I
Nate
didn't.
didn't.
I came up
Dog.
with.
Nate didn't. Nate
I'm a
didn't.
musician. I just extemporized, man.
there you go. In the spirit of jazz. Exactly.
That's right.
Okay, what I want to know, Dr. Clarity, what I would like to know is in this climate in Kentucky, and Cameron is still, boasting about Trump, the Trump endorsement. That was quite some time ago. Um, how do you think that most of Kentucky is going to feel like that, about that? And also, this is like 2 parts. And when it comes to Daniel Cameron, do you believe at this particular time that the debacle of the Breonna Taylor investigations and grand jury, all these type of things, and the hidden information that the DOJ brought out, uh, do you think that Daniel Cameron has a hope between hell and heaven to win the governorship?
My answer is I hope not. But here's the thing. To Daniel Cameron's base, which is mainly MAGA Trump supporters, I don't think that they could give 2 cents about what happened to Breonna Taylor, no matter how awful it was. I'm just going to be honest. I don't think that resonates with them. It resonates with the Democratic base, certainly, because one of the other things that we were leading the chant to this past year, as we did the year before, was Breonna Taylor, say her name. So yeah, we rode him on that, no question. I would hope, though, that this would mobilize the Democratic base to come out in the fall and not be under this assumption. And this is where we need to be very careful, not to be under the assumption that Daniel Cameron is going to lose. Okay, we cannot take that for granted. We did that in 2016. This is how we got Donald Trump. The view was Trump is not presidential material, especially after Access Hollywood. We were like, we're so going to win this election. And then we get election night 2016, one of the most tragic nights in the history of American politics. So I hope not. It's going to be up to voters to come out and judge Cameron according to his record or lack thereof. As I said to Barry Craig, he's an empty suit. We need to make that case to voters, get people out to support the Democratic ticket in the fall, and send Daniel Cameron packing. If he loses this election, he is finished in Kentucky politics, period. He's done. I don't see him being a formidable candidate for the Senate in 2016 or for a House seat. He's done after this if he loses, but he's got to lose first. And so, yeah, the Democratic base has to be mobilized and remember what he said about Breonna Taylor, and remember the dismissive attitude that he had toward her murder and toward the people who killed her. We've got to remind people of that. Let me tell you something. If Megan Thee Stallion could call him out on Saturday Night Live, that is a person that we all need to be very attentive to, and somebody else who we need to call out on a regular basis and let voters know what he is all about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Amen.
The second part of that is, I'm sorry, Aaron, it's just one little second part of that.
Go ahead.
But the little second part of that is, do you think that Black Kentuckians have learned their lesson about when they voted for Daniel Cameron the first time and they based it upon race?
Well, I would hope so. I don't know who said it. and I've heard different variations of that. All skin folk ain't kinfolk, and everybody your color ain't your kind. I would hope that Black Kentuckians who voted for Daniel Cameron in 2019 for Attorney General, or thinking about voting for him for governor in 2023, will remember that. It's not enough to support a person who looks like you to say, hey, we got a brother, we got a sister in statewide office. We got to look at their policies. I mean, this is true at the gubernatorial level with Daniel Cameron. It's certainly going to be true in 24 at the presidential level, because you're going to have people who are going to gravitate toward Tim Scott because he's a black candidate. No, look at his policies and how detrimental they will be to people of color if by some odd chance Tim Scott were to become president, which ain't going to happen. But that's what we need to be leery of in Kentucky with Daniel Cameron.
Yeah. Yes. One thing that I wanted to just touch on, as Kimberly mentioned, like, he's still proud of Trump's endorsement. He's still, standing next to Trump, right? I think reporters asked him recently, what does he think about Trump? He's like, yeah, I'm supporting him. I'm, definitely feeding, which feeds into the whole.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly this democracy is no longer a deal breaker for one of our two political parties. Is that you were a history professor? Is this a historic moment? It feels like it's kind of a historic moment.
This
when you
is
have a guy who's
moment.
legitimately, charged with trying to overturn a free and fair election illegally, and his party's like, "Yep, that's cool. It's just a witch hunt."
Aaron, let me tell you something. That one layer of that, the fact that he tried to overturn a legitimate presidential election and called out the Jacobins that he called out on January 6th and almost overthrew the government of the United States. Yeah, that's scary. But the odd part about it is it could happen again. What do I mean by that? Donald Trump has already been laying out the dog whistles. He's already been laying out the meat for the base, as he did, Kimberly, in Montgomery. He spoke in Montgomery before the melee this past Saturday. Okay? So he's emboldening people already. And so what Donald Trump is doing is, of course, he's attacking Jack Smith, the special prosecutor. He's gone after Alvin Bragg in New York, the black prosecutor in New York. And now he's going after Fani Willis in Georgia. He's already calling her a reverse racist. He's already playing that card. And what I'm afraid of is that he's going to set something very, very awful in motion in the coming days with his rhetoric. That's the story we need to be covering. Yeah, I mean, a lot of us watched what happened in Montgomery. And a lot of us, watched it over and over and repeatedly. And yes, the folding chairs become the symbol of resistance. That's great, but I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. There's going to be a backlash to that, and it's going to be with these MAGA Republicans, a lot of them, who are going to want to take matters into their own hands. And I'm really concerned about a lot of our physical safety, because if we honestly think that Donald Trump is going to be convicted of legitimate charges, things that he did, things that we saw in real time, we think he's going to be convicted, have the cuffs slapped on him, and he's going to be carted off to prison, and there's not going to be any response, we are kidding ourselves. And so I'm very worried. As a historian, I'm very worried. We've seen this playbook before, where charismatic leaders have called out aggrieved people, and those aggrieved people have taken matters into their own hands, and chaos has ensued. I'm afraid we're going to see that movie again. I pray to God I'm wrong, but I think we're going to see that movie again.
Yeah, it definitely feels like we're at a historic time, and I think we've got divisions that are, just vast in our nation, and it's a scary.
But you know something though, Donald Trump didn't start the fire. This has been going on for 2 centuries in our politics. I mean, go back to the Know Nothing Party and the nativism that we saw in the Know Nothing Party, the atmosphere leading up to the Civil War in the 1850s and 60s, The common denominator, which has been race and difference and privilege, has been the common denominator of all those. And that has always been the dark underbelly of American politics. It really accelerated when Barack Obama became president. A lot of people, that was the warning shot to a lot of these people who believe in racial replacement theory, yada, yada, yada. But then Donald Trump gave it voice. He gave it voice, and he made a lot of people who up until this time had kept their racism and their hatred and their homophobia, their transphobia, their militarism, kept that undercover. Well, now they're saying the quiet part out loud. Yeah. And they are armed. We need to be very, very vigilant in the days to come. I hate to be a Debbie Downer, but I'm being a realist, and I'm legitimately worried.
Yeah, I think it's legitimate, and I hear you and I feel you, and I appreciate your grounded concern for where we are, and also just your warning that we should not sleep on this election. That is, I think, a really key takeaway for me. This is not something that we can just assume because Andy's done such a good job and is viewed positively by so much of the electorate. That doesn't mean that people will not retreat to their partisan corners, when it comes time to vote. So really important that we get out the vote. We work really hard to make sure that we keep Andy there because he's a critical backstop on that horrible GOP supermajority in Frankfurt.
And Governor Beshear and Lieutenant Governor Coleman, of course, they're at the top of the ticket. I had the opportunity to meet every single one of the Democratic candidates: Colonel Pam Stevenson, Sierra Enlow, Buddy Wheatley, Kim Reeder, our candidate for auditor. We have a very impressive, young, attractive ticket that if they are elected in November, they're going to do great things for Kentucky. So yes, we need to get Governor Beshear reelected. That's a given. But we also need to be hyping up our down ballot candidates too, because they're very competent, they're very smart, they're not partisan hacks, and they have practical experiences in all the fields that they're running for.
Amen. Yeah, absolutely. We've had all of them on the show. With the absence of the top of the ticket, we have not been able to get Andy Beshear to join us, but the rest of rest of the slate has joined us. All been fantastic folks, great resumes for the position they seek, and smart folks. So yeah, I think you're right. All right, well, Dr. Clardy, thank you so much for sharing your evening with us, and we really appreciate your views. And we will have you back.
Able to speak to you earlier. My wife and I were on vacation and everything. It's been a crazy summer, but we're back into the flow of everything. So you want to talk again, you know where to find me.
Thank you so much.
Good luck this semester.
Thank you so very much. Thank you all for having me as well.
Awesome. So yeah, we're going to move on to our call to action, and I don't know if Kimberly, if you want to do the call to action, then close us out.
I sure can. First of all, I just want to say that we had some excellent guests tonight, and about black lung kills. I knew it was a very treacherous disease, but I learned so much more about it tonight. And then Dr. Clardy, he's always so knowledgeable and just I guess I'm living in Kentucky. He was like a hootenanny, you know what I'm saying? So, yeah. And then also Aaron and Nate and our viewers and listeners, I know he sounded a lot blowing the alarm like Dr. Glass did with us as well. This is serious times that we need to do serious measures. And the best thing that we can do is to vote and talk to at least 10 of your friend and family members and get them to vote as well. We got to vote these clowns out of office. So the call to action is we need you to ensure 4 more years of a compassionate Commonwealth. Give us your views and work with us to expand the voter support for Andy and our great slate of statewide candidates. Yeah. Join us at our campaign kickoff meeting, which is going to be August the 19th at the Pivot Brewery right there in Lexington. Am I correct, Aaron? That's in Lexington?
Indeed, in Lexington.
It's going to be in Lexington, y'all. So, we maybe here in Jefferson County can get like a carpool together or something like that to go. Because I really don't want to drink and I can't drink and drive. We'll have Adrell Camuel. Did I say that right?
Adriel Camuel.
Okay, I was
Pretty
right.
close. You're pretty
And
close.
the candidate for the 93rd district, and a very, very long time friend of the show, and also our very own and great Representative Sherilyn Stevenson, our regular co-host Nima Willie, and our featured speaker, Representative Colonel Pam Stevenson, will be there that night. And I'm hoping that I will be there as well. I really would like to meet you guys, meet everybody, but we'll see. Tonight, got to do the disclaimer, y'all. Progress Kentucky is a nonprofit organization registered with the Kentucky Secretary of State and organized as a 501c4. We are affiliated with the Indivisible Project and the Commonwealth Alliance Voter Engagement, known as CAVE. And we are also very, very proud members of the Forward Kentucky Network. Progress Kentucky's goal is to educate, organize, increase voter turnout, and advance a progressive agenda through civic engagement. So make sure that you join us next week. And we will be joined by a great and wonderful guest. Isn't that right, Aaron?
It's true. We do. We have a great guest. Actually, it is. I'm sorry I didn't put this in the show notes. Adam Edlin is going to be joining us. So at Edlin Renewables, he is. It's actually going to be the 1-year anniversary of the Inflation Reduction Act, and Adam has seen firsthand the amazing investment in clean energy. So Inflation Reduction Act doesn't necessarily sound like a global warming bill, but is the single largest investment in global warming action that the U.S. government or any government has ever taken. And Adam's work in solar in Eastern Kentucky and elsewhere, I think is going to be really informative.
Well, I'm just going to tell you, we love Adam. Okay, so that's going to be a great episode next week. And tonight is episode 125. I'm correct about that? Yes. And it was by our very own amazing Annabelle. She is, oh man, I love that girl. She is on the journey to complete greatness. And when I see her and know what she's doing, it gives me hope for our young people. And also, we can't go anywhere without thinking, Mr. Nate Dogg, and the music that you hear that we're always jamming to, that is specifically by our very own Nate Orshan. And you can find out more music. He may have some new things up as well. And you just go to natosongs.com, and that's NATO songs.com. And if you miss our weekly live stream, do not fret, my pet, because you can listen to us as well. You can also see us and listen to us on the Facebook and YouTube, as you know. And our audio podcast and our show notes are available on Apple, Google, Spotify, and like practically wherever you listen to your podcast. And if you do listen to our podcast, please give us 5 stars. It really, really helps. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. And logo and some graphic content will be and has been by Couchfire Media. You can go see some of their work at couchfiremedia.com. So Annabelle wanted to see my nails tonight. Annabelle, this is just for you. Like, so I gotta always take care of our girl Annabelle. And you made it over the hump. It's Wednesday night. Hey, you only got like 2 more days to go. Do something nice for somebody. Not only will it make them feel great, it will make you feel so, so, so very great as well. So until then, next week, same bat channel, same bat time. Share, share, share this broadcast. Everybody needs to know what's going on. Thank you to our guest, and thank you to all of our viewers and listeners. See you next week.